might say I've been slacking for a month, but you can shut your mouth, cause I only run it up like, who the fuck are you? I've been living up while I rep the red and blue. I just wanna know what the fuck you wanna do, and you can't come for me, cause I'm just hitting snooze.
Alright, welcome to Beaveman of the Dock, episode dos. It's me, Beaveman, obviously, sitting across from the lovely, long-haired, Socratic type Doc.
Are you sure that lovely is the right word you want to use here?
Sure it went there. Well, they seemed apropos, I guess. Okay, so this week's episode was chosen by the Doc himself. So, Doc, tell us what this week's episode is about.
It's about time travel and the consequences and paradoxes that come with.
And it's hard to wrap your mind around time travel because everybody considers time as something that is linear. So I think that's why it's so difficult to wrap your head around time travel. Plus, when you look at time travel, like in the movies and stuff, like Bill and Ted where they keep seeing each other over and over again. Mm-hmm. You're like, would that really happen? Well, I guess maybe it would, but time, if you think about time as always going on as a constant, irrespective of where you are, then I guess it's not so hard of not so much of a stretch, I guess. But really, I think time is because everything else is in a wave, it's not linear.
Everything is definitely linear, but lines can be bent. So, and there are probably 4 or 5 different versions of time travel as far as what's possible and what's not, and why.
And why do we think time travel is possible? Thank you, Einstein.
Yeah.
Right? The cool thing about Einstein was he was wrong several times. That's what was cool. And admitted he was wrong several times because he just hadn't figured things out quite right yet. Well, but when you look back, he probably really wasn't wrong, but he thought he was wrong at the time.
I, for one, believe that time travel is not possible.
Okay.
Not in the sense that most people would say. I think you could probably communicate through time, but I don't think you could actually send matter through time. I think the gravitational, energetic forces that all get together and would tear whatever it is you were sending through apart.
I think that our simple minds can't possibly grasp the concept because, take for instance, things like how people see ghosts and everything. If you really want to get into it and say, when you have this belief, from the time you're a child, if you're raised in a certain household, that there's a heaven and there's a hell and there's God and all this other stuff, and then you start to wrap your head around how huge the universe is, and you start to realize, maybe people weren't really seeing ghosts, and maybe there is no heaven when we die, but maybe it's just a different plane, because what we do know for sure is when we die, our energy becomes part of the universe. Energy is never created or destroyed. That we always know. So, to sit there and say, well, I'm not sure we could travel through time, yeah, I can see that, but I can also see that I can't wrap my head around so many things. I can't wrap my head around how huge, enormous, and how infinitesimal the universe itself is, and for the things that we can't even perceive. For example, when I look up at the night sky and I see all these stars, when we have a good night here in wonderful Michigan, and I see all the stars, do you know how many more stars I would see if I flipped on the night vision goggles I had when I was in the Army and I'm looking in infrared? So in other words, there's things that I can't perceive because of how I am made biologically.
Well, that's the thing. There are so many things in the universe from a human perspective that are simply relative to the human condition. That's why we perceive time as a linear thing, and time is actually more globular. I think.
I would say so too. And that's why I totally agree with you. I think time is not linear. When I think of time, I think of it as that's why I say I think of it as waves. If I'm thinking of something as it's got a peak and then it's got a trough and it's got a peak and it's got a trough, and it's not a straight up and down line. It's a wave. It's a big arcing wave. So that's how I think of it. And I can think of it that way because when I think about the different ways that, say for example, that light travels. When you look at how a laser light travels, for example, you're talking about a straight beam of light. When you're talking about intense pulse light, it's this big blast of light. Well, why is that different? And the other good thing about light is you can't really predict where it's going to go and how it's going to go, but you know that there's some sort of wave behind it. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, you kind of can.
Well, you can predict, but what's the whole basis behind quantum physics is they have a general idea, but it's not like regular physics. Regular physics you can basically predict, but quantum physics you can't.
Because of the particles are big enough that we can identify them.
Well, yeah, but the particles can go in a direction that we think they're going to go, but they also might not go in that direction. That's why quantum physics is so cool, in my opinion.
And in some cases, particles like electrons seem to be in two places at once. They actually can go two different directions at the same time. That's why you get quantum entanglement.
Yeah, and that's why it's so cool, because you're like, okay, so when they talk about the different energy fields, and when they talk about jumping from one field to another, we think of that as concentric circles, but that's really not what you're talking about. That's how it's really hard to wrap your head around it. You're like, what are you talking about? If I was to draw that as a circle and say, okay, the electron's going to jump from this field to this field, in my pea-brain head, I'm thinking, oh, it's going to jump from the outer circle to the inner circle. But those aren't really the circles that we're talking about necessarily. So let's just say, for example, in this case, Beaveman and the Doc are two middle-aged guys talking about shit that they know very little about. So you can't always quote us on anything we say, but
I watch a lot of Science Channel.
yeah, and that's good for you. So, but tell us really the basis of time travel. Why did you want to talk about time travel?
Well, there's always the paradox. Like Pinocchio, my nose is about to grow. If his nose grows, he was telling the truth. But we know his nose only grows when he lies. So it's an impossibility in either way you look at it. And in time travel, you encounter, movies about time travel especially, you encounter a lot of that sort of situation where the director chooses to just overlook it because it's fun. And, the show that I was hoping to talk about does exactly that.
And that's when I think that it's the most fun, because if you try to wrap your head around the whole concept, one, it will give you a headache, really, and then you've lost the whole point of the show or the movie. Now, if you wanted to watch a documentary or something like that, that's completely different, where somebody's giving you the theory of time travel. But if you really want to have fun and immerse yourself and enjoy yourself, then yeah, movies like, Back to the Future or Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure or any of the shows that are about time travel, when they just do it for fun, that's fun. When you go to those types of movies and somebody wants to analyze it, those are the people I want to punch in the head. Because they're missing the point. The point was to have fun just watching the movie.
Well, in my opinion, what makes the best time travel movies are the ones that are consistent. Like I said, there are probably a good 5 or 6 different time travel theories, and as long as they pick one and stick to it, everything is fine. So, in this one that I was going to talk about is Futurama. I mean, what better way to analyze time travel paradoxes than a comical cartoon? And, well,
first of all, let's just say, I can't remember when Futurama came out. I'm thinking the 90s, right? Futurama, that's when it originally came out. Because this spawned off of, same guy who created Futurama created The Simpsons, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that must have come out in the early 90s. Is that show still on?
No, they had their final season 2 or 3 years ago.
Wow, so it's been going on for a really long time. Because I remember watching it when it first came out.
I don't think they made it past season 8 or 9.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm totally way off. Anyway.
I gotta check again. Someday I will.
So if I remember correctly, the whole basis of the show is it's about this kid Fry, is what it started off with. Now he's kind of like sort of the main character, but kind of not. They've all just developed their characters. Fry's from the past.
He's always been the main character.
Didn't he like crawl into a pizza oven or something and like, wakes up in the future or some crap like that?
He went to a cryogenic facility. He was delivering pizzas. And the individual that he was delivering to was named Icy Wiener.
Okay.
And it was New Year's Eve. And he tripped and fell into one of the cryogenic storage chambers and was cryogenically frozen for 1,000 years.
So they just didn't notice this pizza kid, and like, wasn't there some other person that was supposed to have that chamber?
They addressed that.
So again, see, here I am trying to analyze it when I should just have fun with it. Okay, just leave it alone. Okay, so basically the show's about Fry, right? So Fry's in the show. We've got they call every egghead person's got to be a professor, right? Do they call him professor in the show?
The professor is the old man is actually Fry's great, I don't know how many greats, nephew.
Nephew, because Fry obviously never had children.
Right.
Well, anyway, at that point in time, Fry had never had children. Okay, so this is in the future, and then there's aliens and all that good stuff. You know, he's got his friend Leela, who's like the captain of the ship, right? She's the cyborg who was Peg back in the day on what the hell was the name of that show?
Cyclops.
Yeah, but she was Peg.
Yeah.
With
Katie Seagal.
With Al Bundy and stuff like that. And Married with Children.
Yes.
Yeah, Married with Children back in the 80s. Yeah, back in the 80s.
Early 80s.
Yeah. So she's the one who does that voice. Mm-hmm. She's a good character for her. She's always funny. Okay, so you got them, and then what else you got?
You've got the robot Bender.
Oh yeah, he's
a bending unit who doesn't do any bending.
Okay, so
he's a kleptomaniac. He's a woman bot, womanizer. I don't know what to call him in that respect, but he's like the worst possible version of a human being in a robot body.
Well, I like him.
Yeah,
and he drinks beer. He
kill
swears.
all humans.
Yeah. Okay. So he's good. I like him. Okay.
Then you've got Hermes. He's the bureaucrat. He is basically the HR department for the delivery company.
So that's what they do. They're delivery drivers.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I got it. Okay. Is that the guy who looks like he's Jamaican or something?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then you got Zoidberg. Is that his name? Zoidberg?
Yeah. He's a lobster guy.
He's a lobster guy. Okay. He's funny too. Okay. Well, I mean, I enjoy the show. I used to watch it quite a bit, but it was interesting to see this episode that you brought up. So tell us about this episode.
Well, they were taking a detour to stop and observe some kind of star that's going supernova.
Okay, completely ridiculous, but go ahead.
And while they're observing the star going supernova, Fry decides that he wants some popcorn.
So let me put my Neil deGrasse Tyson hat on real quick here. So you got these idiots in a spaceship, and they're gonna go watch a star explode, which was called a supernova, when a star explodes, and they think that that's a good idea in close proximity.
I don't know, maybe they got some kind of shield.
Okay, so these idiots are going to go watch a star, a collection of gas in its last cycle of life, and they're going to know exactly when it's going to explode, which is also funny, but okay.
Okay. Well, Fry decides that he wants to get some popcorn, and it's like Jiffy Pop. It's in one of those tin pans.
Which is always going to have, they're going to have Jiffy Pop in the future.
That's right.
1,000 years in the future, they're still going to have Jiffy Pop.
They've got a lot of things in the future that we still had.
Like the microwave.
More advanced, that's right.
Okay, right? Okay.
It's a super microwave, too,
Gotcha.
because when you put the Jiffy Pop tin into the microwave during a supernova, you get time travel.
Okay.
According to them.
So we've got an exploding star that's letting off radiation in the form of waves. And then we've got a microwave, which is on the light spectrum in the microwave range. So they're now hitting each other, is what you're saying.
And somehow that little itty-bitty microwave makes all the difference between now and 1940-something.
But only because he put metal in the microwave.
Right.
If he wouldn't have put metal in the microwave, he wouldn't have got the wave that actually caused all that problem, we assume.
And he would have just missed the shell.
Or they would all be dead because clearly they were getting covered by massive radiation exposure from the exploding star.
Correct.
Okay, so more than likely, really, if you think about it, Fry probably saved their lives because they're a bunch of idiots going to watch a star explode in the first place.
Right.
That's kind of what I was thinking, but... Okay, so we've got the collision of the two waves. Boom, all of a sudden they time travel to... When? We're talking about 50,
1947.
Right? 1947. Okay. 1947. So now they're in 1947 in the middle of the desert. Here's where it gets a little funny too is they immediately say that they're in Roswell, New Mexico, correct?
Right. And the only reason they crashed was because they didn't have their global positioning satellites. Like, that ship would need that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That would make no sense. Yeah, why would you need that? But, okay. So, as if, Leela can't pilot the ship without a GPS in our atmosphere at that time in the 40s. Doesn't make much sense.
How many planets had they gone to
Yeah, exactly.
that didn't have global
They didn't
positioning?
need it. Exactly. She didn't need it. Okay. So here's the funny thing, right? So they crashed down in Roswell, New Mexico. So this is supposed to be the site historically of where we get the idea of Area 51 and all of the sightings of the UFOs in Roswell. Did you know, though, that Roswell is not where the sightings of the UFOs took place?
Really? Well, that's just where they took the wreckage.
The sightings are actually in a smaller town by Roswell. But Roswell's the bigger town. Roswell's the one that had the newspaper, I guess is why Roswell is the one who covers the story. That's why everybody thinks of Roswell when they think of the UFO sightings.
Now, see, I always thought that the base that was near Roswell wasn't there before that. Like, they took and built the base around the wreckage.
Mm-hmm.
So, I could be wrong. Probably am wrong.
This is just information I get from another podcast. But yeah, it's my understanding is that the actual sightings and the actual wreckage was not in Roswell, but Roswell is the one that had the actual newspaper. So there you go. So, but anyway, for a comedic sense, for the cartoon, there they are. They're in Roswell, and obviously there was no Air Force then.
Not yet.
Not yet. So that would have been the Army and the Army Air Corps, technically, that would have found the wreckage and had the hangar and had the base. So there you go. Probably the Army is what they're calling it.
Well, the problem that they had, there were several problems. A, the ship was damaged in the crash, which
Seems ridiculous.
was fixed. But then Leela said that there would be about an 8-hour layover to fix the cup holder.
Right. Which was funny.
But
Yep.
the problem that they ran into beyond that was that the microwave was burned out. So they needed to find a new microwave.
Right, and it's 1947. There are no microwaves.
Well, there are, but not in the...
Well, there's microwaves. Microwave oven is a term that and when we call microwave, we're talking about the microwave oven, but that is not... Microwave is in nature, period. It's in the light spectrum. So it's in the spectrum of, waveforms.
Microwave jammers, microwave communication, they were using all of that back then. So that's why they identified a microwave dish that was on top of a building, and they needed to find a way to get it so they could use that to produce the microwaves that they needed to get home, and they only had so long to get it done before their window to travel back to the exact point in time was gone.
Which is always funny when people say it's in exactly 24 hours. It's funny that the professor had a chance to just look at his watch and say in exactly 24 hours from now, which again is why it's always funny and why you don't want to think about it too much, because it's just funny. Of course it's not going to be exactly 24 hours from the time he happens to look at his watch.
Well, I figured time travel.
You have time anyway.
They have all the time
You have all the time in the
want.
world, right? That's what I always figure too. I'm like, why would you have to make this certain amount of time if you already can time? If you know you can time travel, you've always got that opportunity. But again, that's why you look at it and say, yeah, it's just for fun.
Then they had a problem where Bender had fallen out of the ship trying to steer it to help them land, and he got busted up and pieces of him were laying all
Because he
over
didn't
the
wear a
place.
seatbelt.
That's right.
He was an idiot, and he's like, those things kill more people than they help, or something like that. So he flies out of the ship because he's Bender, and gets destroyed, basically, broken into a bunch of pieces, and that's the pieces that they find that they think are the alien spacecraft.
Right.
So that's where they get their their wreckage. Okay, so now they've got the pieces of Bender. Now here's where it gets funny. This is where I think it gets funny. Is this just happens to be where Fry's grandpa was stationed
At Roswell, the Roswell base.
at the Roswell base. Now, if you were really stationed at Roswell, okay, so now Fry probably fell into the cryogenic stuff. What are we talking about, like the 2000s?
It was 1999.
That's when he fell in there. Okay, so
at the turn of the millennium.
at the turn of the millennium, he wouldn't have known his grandfather was stationed at Roswell because nobody knew about Roswell. If anybody knew about Roswell and they were actually stationed there, and if it actually existed, if there was a base at Roswell, if there was an Area 51, they weren't allowed to tell you there was an Area 51. That's kind of like, whenever anybody, they sit there and they, they brag about being Delta Force. People who brag about being Delta Force probably are not Delta Force because Delta Force people don't tell you they're Delta Force. You know what I mean? So if you were stationed at Roswell, New Mexico, and you're Fry's grandpa, more than likely you didn't tell him you were stationed at Area 51 because you weren't allowed to tell him you were stationed at Area 51. You took that to your grave.
It might not have been called Area 51 back then, or it could have been just your average everyday base, but everything that I've seen about it, it's quite a ways from any town. It's like a place unto itself. That's why I was thinking that maybe they built the base around the wreckage rather than transporting the wreckage to a base.
Well, now when there was the original sightings and everything, there was a base.
Okay.
When you're talking like historically, there was the military that went out to investigate all that stuff. So there had to have been something there. But yeah, I agree with what you say. It probably wasn't what it is now,
right?
Or that we think of what it is now. There probably was some small outpost because that's pretty typical. I mean, most of the time. I mean, if you look at the time frame, where were we testing? Where were we testing our our nuclear capabilities? Most of the missile silos. If you were on if you were part of the people who did stuff like artillery, the large artillery, speaking wise, like my dad was stationed in Texas because that's where the big Herc missiles and things were. That's artillery, so it's all in the desert. There's not much point in having those large missiles out in North Carolina in the woods. They usually have that stuff out there. So, and where are they doing a lot of the flight testing? They're going to do a lot of the flight testing out there also. So, yeah, it's a good place to have those types of bases. So, probably there was a base there, just probably not the grand scale that we think of as, Area 51.
Correct.
And who would be in charge of Area 51 now? Probably, if I'm going to guess, I would always say probably the Air Force, and they always make it out to be the Army, but I don't know. It's hard to say.
Well, how many times do different branches work together to support each other? The Army handles a lot of logistical things while the Air Force handles the actual technology. Mm-hmm. Or the Navy handles logistics for the Marines all the time.
Right.
So,
it's hard to say because, you just think of how they've split up the forces and everything like that because most people don't think that astronauts are in the military. Most people don't think that, oh yeah, where do we get our astronauts? Well, we get them from the Navy and we get them from the Air Force, and there's, you can get them from the Army too. So it's all these different nuances and different little sects and everything that we have no idea about.
Actually, I'm pretty sure that Area 51 is controlled by the Space Force now.
Ah, yes, the Space Force. That's why I'm going back in. I'm getting back into the Army so I can be in the Space Force. That's what everybody's going to do. So anyway, so Fry's grandpa is supposedly stationed at, he says Area 51. Doesn't he? He says it.
Well, that's what they call it back then.
My grandpa's stationed at Area 51.
Yeah,
okay.
He knew his grandfather was there.
Okay.
And right from the beginning, Professor tells Fry, hey, whatever you do, don't interact with your own past, especially your grandfather, since he's there. Because you could cause yourself to not exist. And so, what's he do? He goes on to base looking for a way to retrieve the microwave dish. And what do you know? He bumps into his grandfather, trips over and lands on a pile of rusty bayonets.
Yeah, because Fry's an idiot. Which he's not thinking like, I already exist, so I don't have to protect him. It's already done for me.
Right.
So he's not thinking ahead. He's thinking now he's got to do everything he can possibly do to save his grandfather, who doesn't need saving, who, by the way, looks like Fry version of Forrest Gump for some reason. Forrest Gump must have been big at that time. They had this whole head shaved side and acting like Forrest Gump the whole time.
Oh, Andy's gay.
Yeah, and he's gay. Yeah, that was a good one. that was really funny. Okay, so he's trying to protect Grandpa from just about everything, but really he's just about jacking everything up. And I kind of think Grandpa was attracted to him a little bit there when they were having pie in the diner. Also, that was.
Did you think of Men in Black when they were sitting in the diner eating pie?
I actually didn't, but that's a good point. I forgot all about that from Men in Black. No, I did not think of that, but that's a good tie-in.
They stole some Star Trek stuff too.
Well, see, I'm not a Trekkie, so I would not have caught any Star Trek stuff.
Well, we'll get to that later on.
All right. So what happens next? So now what?
Well, Fry and his paranoia, realizing that he almost gets hit, his grandfather almost gets hit by a Jeep, almost falls into a rusty bayonet and dies. And he's paranoid that something's bad's going to happen. He was like, well, I have to protect him because I want to exist. That's basically all he does, he says. So, is exist.
Right.
And so he sits him down in the Jeep. They drive out into the desert, and they find this seemingly abandoned home. And he puts him in there, locks the door, and drives away. And what do you know? A mushroom cloud in the rearview mirror.
Oh, the best part of that scene, though, was where he took the calendar of the pinup girl and he put it in the cabin with his grandfather.
Like,
and he hung it up. And his grandfather lifts the next page and it's like this hillbilly with his shirt off, and then Fry slaps it back down. That was the best part. And then he said that classic line, he's like, you ever feel like you like girls just because you're supposed to, or something like that? And Fry's like, stop it, shut up. Oh, because Fry's grandmother was serving them pie at the diner.
Oh, that's right.
Because Fry was like, "Oh, who's that?" And thought it was, she obviously he thought she was hot, and he's like, "Oh," finds out it's his grandma.
Yeah.
So there you go.
How
So
twisted is that?
That gets even better. So he ends up killing his grandfather because he's a freaking moron. Obviously there would have been signs everywhere that says, "Hey, bombing site, whatever."
Well, the funny thing is I'm pretty sure there were never any nuclear testing going on anywhere near Roswell.
No, where was it that they did that?
Well, it was in New Mexico, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't in around the Roswell area. They did a lot of flight tests and stuff like that because, well, what better place than an open desert where you can crash stuff without causing any real damage to civilian stuff. So I think, again, maybe that's one of those cases where you just don't want to analyze it too closely because you spoil it. No.
All right, so Fry realizes that he's killed his grandpa, but Fry still exists. So why is that? That doesn't make any sense. So Fry exists. He knows that was his grandfather. He knows that lady was his grandmother. So how is Fry still alive, full well knowing that dude that just died was his grandfather?
Well, see, this is where we start getting into the different theories of time travel. From Fry's point of view, his logic is that if his grandfather is dead, and he still exists, then that would mean that the woman that he thought was his grandmother was not really his grandmother.
Right, and why is Fry's logic wrong? Because Fry is thinking of time as being linear.
Correct.
Basically. He's thinking that because he's dead at this point in time, that this lady's not my grandmother, and that, I can do whatever I want, which is that false feeling. That's false thought. That would be the complete linear time idea.
And so he winds up going back to the diner to tell his grandmother that his grandfather was dead. Well, she's feeling sad, and he winds up consoling her, and the next thing you know, they show the two of them laying in bed together, and the professor and Leela, they all show up, and Bender, they all show up outside the window looking in, saying, "Oh my God, what have you done?"
Right, because Fry's an idiot.
Fry is an idiot. And he explains to the professor. He says, well, I figured she can't be my grandmother because I still exist. And he says, you idiot. You exist because you're your own grandfather now.
Right. Which Fry didn't realize that before, that guy that he just offed was his grandfather. Because time again is
or
not
would have been
his grandfather. But now he's not. Because Fry was able to go back through that loop because time exists.
More of a globular fashion.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So now Fry is genetically related
inbred
to basically to everyone in his family from this generation on.
That explains why he's so messed up and
I guess so.
Simple-minded, for a lack of a better term.
But at least he lived his entire life up until that point not knowing that.
True.
Okay, so the funny part was, when he was saying that wasn't his grandmother, but then he looks over in the bed and she's like crocheting in the bed and she's got like...
Close the window, dearie, you'll catch a draft.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Making him some sugar cookies or whatever, so then he freaks out and they get out of there. Now this is when they go to rescue Bender, or had they already rescued Bender by then?
No, they hadn't. The rescuing Bender's body was one of the last things they did. They had his head the whole time.
Oh, right. Okay, so they had the people at Area 51 or Roswell or whatever had reconstructed Bender to make it look like, basically they'd taken his butt and his legs and made it look like a little spaceship. They had reconstructed it and they thought that's what it was supposed to look like.
Also, something we forgot to mention. While Zoidberg was collecting Bender's pieces,
yeah,
he was captured by the military and they started dissecting him.
Right. Which where you get that good old alien autopsy stuff, which is the giant hoax.
Right.
Right. Okay. And that was pretty. The best part about that was where he was saying they were asking him why he was there. If he was there to make some sort of alien human hybrid, and he's like, "Are you coming on to me?"
I'm not hearing no.
Like, I'm not hearing no. Oh, that was really funny.
When they laid out all the food to see what he would eat, and they said, apparently he doesn't like human food. And they asked him why. He's like, well, I can't afford the buffet.
I don't know my wallet.
It's free. And then it just, the whole table gets demolished.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, he was pretty funny. That was really good. What was the other... Oh, who was the president? I can't remember who was the president at the time.
Was it...
Oh, I cannot remember
not
who it was.
Was it Eisenhower?
Was it? I cannot remember. I just thought that whole thing was funny about how, they were just covering everything up, and he was asking him...
Truman.
He's like, are you here to wage war? Or basically saying that if they were, we were going to give up, really, initially, is what he was saying. Which was pretty funny because I'm like, oh, so you just roll over pretty easily for the aliens that were coming. But really, we all know that really what happened with Roswell is that we were able to obtain alien technology at that time in exchange for us giving the rights to these aliens to come down here and probe whoever they wanted to. That's what happened. And that's how you get the iPhone.
Well, I was going to say that's why you've got the government trying to imitate the aliens by crawling up everybody's ass with a microscope and getting involved in their business.
Well, that too. But again, that goes off into a whole other thing, where you're talking about. And that's where it doesn't get fun either, where, everything's a giant conspiracy. And if you were in the military and you don't believe in conspiracies, there's something wrong with you. You'd have to be like my father, who doesn't believe in conspiracies. So now they go rescue Zoidberg, right? They go rescue Zoidberg. They get the rest of Bender's parts.
They get Bender's parts, and they say, well, we can't risk altering the timeline. And I think the professor says something to the effect of, screw that, we've already done that.
Yeah, thank you.
So
thank you, Fry.
They just fly over, they snag the satellite dish, and start popping more popcorn as they fly up towards the sun. And they travel back to the future, so to speak. But in the process, they drop Bender's head.
Right.
Now, this is the part that I was telling you that they stole from Star Trek.
Okay.
Because when they dropped Bender's head, it fell in the desert, and they didn't have time to go back for it. So what do? They just keep on flying. Mm-hmm. 1,000 years later, they go to where they dropped Bender's head. It's still there, buried in the dirt. Mm-hmm. And he was like, well, boy, buried in the sand all this time, it must have been terrible. No, it was pretty nice. And then you guys showed up.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So again, though, if you're traveling through time, why couldn't you just go back and get him? You're already traveling through time. You always have plenty of time if you can travel through time.
It's like Marty McFly said, I've got plenty of time. I've got a time machine.
Exactly. So now here's the part that always, is a hard thing to wrap your head around. How is it possible that Fry is his own grandfather? It's only possible if time is not linear. Because if time was linear, that means that everything that happened an hour ago is no longer happening. That's the only way it would be possible for him to go back and kill his grandfather and not exist anymore. However, we know that, well, in theory, that everything that happened an hour ago still happened an hour ago. It's still part of the time continuum.
There is a thing called an Einstein-Rosen bridge. And basically what that is that space and time are linked. They're one and the same. So to travel through space means you're traveling through time. Their theory is that with enough energy and enough gravity, you can bend the space, because through concepts of gravitational lensing, yada, 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 we know that space can be bent. So with enough energy, you can basically fold time and space on itself, meaning you can travel from one point to another point instantaneously if you can create a temporary field that lets you out of that bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Or some would call it a wormhole.
Right.
The problem with that is that kind of gravitational force, I think, would destroy any matter that tried to pass through it. Might be able to get energy to go through it intact, but matter, no. That's why I don't think time travel is possible. Now, there are different types of time travel. Some say, like in the movie, or I'm sorry, not movie, the TV show Continuum, there was a guy who encountered his own grandmother and she was killed. But he was still there. Now, that's not a problem for him in this show unless he tries to go back to the future. If he traveled through time back into the future, then he would cease to exist. But because he's still there, he maintains his claim on the matter that he inhabits. I'm more of a thought like the TV show Sliders. What we perceive as an alternate timeline is actually a parallel universe. So you can do anything you want without causing a paradox. So you could go into this parallel universe and you wind up coming out in a different part of the timeline, or the timeline between the universes is mixed up. Or offset, maybe that's a better word. And what winds up happening is you cross over and this guy's grandmother is killed, which would prevent him from being born in that timeline, but he's there because that's not the timeline that he came from.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually a parallel universe.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I think what you're talking about, though, when you talk about bending the space-time continuum or whatever, and you say that you couldn't do it because of matter, because it would not be able to make the jump, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're talking about could you do that with leaving your body behind, as in make the jump with the energy that is the essence of your being and jump into another form, I think you could do that.
They explore that in Quantum Leap.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty good. Obviously it's all fiction and everything, but again, that's where you have to. That's where you're making that leap without that body that that your energy inhabits.
Somehow your consciousness survives by inhabiting another body.
Right. So that's I think that's a pretty good, interesting. I think it's a fun theory, but that would kind of negate what you're not negate, or actually it would prove what you're saying about not being able to take the matter with you. Because that does make sense, because we're thinking about something that is a hard structure compared to something that is, again, part of the energy that is in the universe. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And by the basic, just by the premise of something that can travel, light can travel through space, whereas, at a certain speed, whereas we cannot, and we can't make that jump from one thing to another.
So if you were in your car and your car could travel at the speed of light, and you turned on your headlights, would they work?
Yes, they would. yes, they would. Well, if you want to even get goofy, if I'm in a long cylindrical tube that's traveling at the speed of light, and I'm at the back of the tube, and I walk forward, am I going faster than the vehicle?
Now, I've heard concepts. If the speed of light is the limit to how fast anything can travel, the idea would be that the closer to the speed of light you get, the less matter moves. You can actually, if you could travel at the speed of light, your aging process, your molecular activity would stop.
Mm-hmm.
And then until you stop traveling the speed of light. And the closer to the speed of light you would get, the more it would slow down. So technically, we are all time travelers because we are all traveling closer to the speed of light than as if we were standing still.
Mm-hmm. And you're talking about just because of the rotational force of the planet.
Right. And they have proven this by when they take like clocks into orbit. If you go deep down into the Earth's crust with one clock, and they've been synchronized, and then you go into orbit with another clock, the difference in time will be significant. So technically, the astronaut is experiencing time faster than the guy in the cave.
But now, didn't they do that with twins, though? They took the one twin was an astronaut and the other one was here, and the twin in the space aged slower than the other one, but as soon as he came back here, they didn't take long. They basically caught back up.
I don't remember that.
It wasn't that long. I heard about it. It was on the radio, but because also you get you get taller in space because you don't have that force of gravity, on you,
Holding you together.
Yeah. So of course that all goes back to normal. Not too long after you get back. But again, too, you have to look at other things. Obviously your bone density is going to be different when you're in space. It's not going to be as strong as it is on the Earth, I would presume, because you don't have that gravitational force working on it. You have to have that loading force on your body to build that bone structure.
But if you were traveling at the speed of light, everything would just basically stop. I mean, the person traveling the speed of light wouldn't notice it.
Right.
Because the chemicals in their brain aren't interacting to fire neurons, and the electricity traveling through your brain is also traveling at the speed of light or slightly slower. So everything would stop. Nothing would change.
So which is really, really, if you really want to blow your mind when you think about it, if you're traveling at the speed of light, everything stops, but you're going faster than anything. If
right.
you really think about it, which is really crazy when you think about it. And you wouldn't know. So really, you could be, the time that it took you, if we ever were to achieve that, you travel the speed of light, you never age, but 100 years has gone by on Earth, or 1,000 years has gone by on Earth.
Now here's an interesting concept. What if the speed of light was not constant?
Yeah, that's...
It can't be constant.
Why do you think that?
Because light is affected by gravity. So every time it passes near something with gravity, it's going to slow down a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's because the equation is how we wrap our heads around the constant of light.
Right. Everything is relative.
Right. Exactly. But yes, in this realm or whatever here on Earth, on how we perceive it, yes, it is a constant for us based on this mathematical formulation. So,
if you could travel back in time, what would you do? What would you change?
Well, I think if I could travel back in time, I couldn't change anything. I like to go by that theory, like no matter what I do, it would still be the same. But when I go back, I would still go back. I kind of think that if I could go back in time knowing that the outcomes wouldn't change, I would still go back in time just to see it.
Just to observe?
But I think that even if we could go back in time, no matter what we did, the outcomes would be the same.
I would probably go back and meet Jesus, which could be dangerous because I've been told I look like Jesus.
Well, it could be dangerous because, one, you're going to go back and you might find out that he's a fictional character made up by the Roman Catholic Church.
I believe he's real.
Two, you'd be looking for a white guy and he wasn't white. Three, it's very possible that Jesus was actually a hybrid alien. All kinds of good stuff.
Even if I went back and found out that he was just an ordinary man, I don't think it would change my beliefs.
Well, even if Jesus was just an ordinary man, you still can't deny the influence that he had on the world.
That's why.
That's the coolest thing. So it doesn't matter what anybody says about whether it's true or it's false or whatever. You can't deny that he's the most influential person that ever walked the face of our planet. That is why he is the coolest. That is true.
I did find documentation that proves that he did exist. There was a man that was crucified named Jesus, and that the governors of the area, Roman governors, were having problems with them. They have written documentation of his execution.
Oh, I don't doubt that he existed. But again, you go back to the conspiracy theories. There's that, there's supposedly documented proof that once upon a time it came down to a vote in the Roman Catholic Church as to whether or not they were going to say he was an ordinary man or the Son of God. And they decided to say that he was going to be the Son of God.
Why can't he be both?
Well, that's because one makes you basically just a prophet, and one makes you the Messiah. So they had to decide, are we going to say that he was the Messiah, or are we going to say that he was a prophet like Muhammad? And it came down to a vote.
He was whatever God made him to be. That's what I would say.
Well, I reckon so. I reckon that would be the argument.
Of course, like I said, I've born and raised Catholic, but was never really a very good one.
Yeah, well, I was born and raised Catholic too, but when you start to look at, beliefs about how we're the only ones in the universe, that you can't believe that. I mean, I don't believe that because there's so much that we simply don't understand. Whenever I talk about stuff that we really don't understand, I usually just, the example I always use is look up at the sky and see what you see. And that's what we see and what we perceive. If I flip infrared goggles on you, you're going to see a hell of a lot more than you could see. And it's all about what we're made and what we can see. I can't see the same things that a hawk can see. I don't see, I can't see at night like a cat can. So there's all different types of realities. So but it's not that I think that all of it's fake or phony or anything. I think it's just the stuff that either something that went asleep in our brain a long time ago, or something that hasn't been awakened in us because we're just too primitive and we haven't made it there yet. That's why you look at the hybridization of, humans are evolving. You can't, that's one thing you can't argue with. Darwin didn't say that he wasn't saying that we came from apes. Darwin was saying that species adapt and evolve, which is true. I mean, that's why polar bears are white,
Evolution. I always said that evolution is just a birth defect that was beneficial to whoever suffered it first.
Right.
A genetically inheritable birth defect.
Yep. The
That's
first
all
generation. Well, the first generation is perceived as being odd, but they're the generation that survives. Their generation is generation of the children, whatever. Exactly. Yeah, because obviously the first polar bears probably were not white. They were probably brown, and then all of a sudden one of them has a white bear, and then that's how they adapt to their environment. So, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's all just about perception and what what the different realities are, and that's why I don't poo-poo religion. I believe a lot of it too, but I also have to say, you have to open your mind and say, okay, what's actually going on? I would like to think that there is some great plan, but in the end, all I know for sure is when I leave this earth, that at least when I leave this body, at least I know the body goes behind. The energy goes somewhere. I would hope it goes somewhere much nicer. But that's all I know for certain, is that the body ain't going with me. And that's why when you talk about these different jumps or these, time travel or whatever, maybe there are different realities, or maybe there are, and that's where we get our perception of people who see ghosts and people who see these aliens or whatever. Maybe it's something else.
It's funny. You know the old saying, you can't take it with you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was said that Jesus took his body with him. So maybe you can take it with you.
And I hope not, because by the time I go out, I'm pretty sure if I went now, I don't want to take what I got with me. So I hope not. I hope I get something else. I hope I get something better.
Well, as George Carlin said, he who dies with the most debt wins.
Well, I hope that isn't me. All right, well, this has been our episode of Beaveman in the Dock. It takes a weird turn. So next week, or next time we get together, we're going to have a little fun. Doc was in the Navy, and I was in the Army. So what we're going to do for fun is I am going to write up my rendition of what I think a day in the life of young, what were you like? What do you call you guys? Seamen?
Yeah, unfortunately.
A day in the life of what it was like to be a young seaman Doc.
Or sailor.
Okay, sailor. And so he would write up, what he thought it would be like to be a day in the life of a soldier, or more specifically in mine, paratrooper. So that should be amusing. And what I want to do is, obviously, I don't want it to be serious whatsoever. I want it to be funny. I just want to see what type of stereotypes he and I come up with, and that should be pretty amusing. So that's what you have to look forward to on the next episode of Beaveman in the Dock. I am the Beaveman.
And I'm the Doc.
And all I have to say now is adios, mooch fuckos.